Three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and I want to do a video on Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. I saw this last night, and I just want to kind of get my thoughts about it. Hopefully keep this around 20 minutes or so. Oh boy, where do I even start? The Rise of Skywalker is a difficult movie to really review for me. Number one is it was super fast paced. Like, this was two movies crammed into one, for sure. Like, the pacing, it just felt like it was on fast forward. That's the first big critique about it. Number two is I didn't hate the film. And I feel like this is going to be a very, very divisive film for a lot of people. You're either going to go in, you're going to see it, and you're going to go, this is the shittiest film I've seen. It's even worse than Last Jedi. I hate it. And, you know, if you're on that bandwagon, I think you already know. I think you probably know before you even see the film. Or you might just be an unabashed Star Wars fan and you love all this Disney Star Wars the Star Wars films so far. And Last Jedi is not going to be any different. There's some cool things in The Last Jedi. Or not Last Jedi. I've been saying that. I've been hearing that word for so long. Or that title for so long. It's like muscle memory. The Rise of Skywalker. There's some cool things in The Rise of Skywalker. Really, there is. And if you've watched the films thus far, well, you're probably going to see it. You probably didn't see Last Jedi. And despite what you thought about the film, and just full disclaimer, I really liked Last Jedi. It's a flawed film, and I'm not here to argue about its merits and flaws in this video, but I want you to know where I'm coming from so you can take it. I'm not one of these people who I'm not part of the fandom menace. I don't hate on everything that Disney's doing. Definitely have strong critiques, and definitely, even though I don't really like how the fandom menace conducts themselves, I don't like echo chambers, I don't like outrage culture, and I don't like a lot of the things they stand for. They do have some points. It doesn't immediately make them wrong. But again, I don't want to get in the weeds about that discussion. We can have that another time. I invite people to talk to me if you want a fair, rational discussion. Anyways, this film was everything I was afraid it was going to be. As a fan of The Last Jedi, I was really afraid that all this, the hateful fan reaction, which I'm just going to call fandom menace. I know not everyone that dislikes the film is fandom menace or whatever, but just for the sake of knowing, identifying attitudes and things like that, the outrage of the fandom menace, I believe Disney catered to. Not them specifically, of course. Just there was noise on the internet, and Disney obviously heard it. And I was afraid, man, they're going to go in and they're going to just change the third film in all sorts of directions, and they're going to try to pander to this audience that's complaining. Now, here's the thing. I was really deathly afraid of that, because number one, The Last Jedi has a lot of merits. It's one of the most misunderstood films I have ever seen. I listen to the critiques. They're loud and vocal, and for the most part, most of the critiques I hear are a bunch of BS. It's people looking to find stupid things to hate about the film because something in the film clashes with their identitarianism, and so therefore the movie's stupid, and they will see it through their own lens. Again, I'm getting in the weeds. I'm just really trying to establish a groundwork of where I come from. Disney should not have pandered to those people, because those are the people that are going to come in and they're going to bash this film even worse. Why? Because this film is even worse. Of the three films so far that Disney has made for the Skywalker trilogy, this one is the worst, unequivocally. The Force Awakens previously was the worst of the film, in my opinion, because J.J. Abrams doesn't know how to be creative. He very much is just paint by numbers. And Star Wars is all about creativity. It's all about myth. It's all about heart. It's about family and character. It's about imagination. good versus evil. These are all things that J.J. Abrams seems completely incapable of doing. Now, I do think he's a good director. I think he's got, he's very talented as far as behind the camera. He makes energetic film. He's got a certain sensibility and a vision of how he puts things on screen that I actually really appreciate. I think his Star Trek films, while obviously not close to, what actual Star Trek was, were actually very fine films in their own right. If they weren't Star Trek, you could look at them and say, hey, this is just random new sci-fi show or movies. They really have a lot of merit. Star Wars, of course, you can't really take it on that. And especially when you attach it to a previously existing series of films. Disney's ultimate mistake, in my opinion, was trying to make an Episode 7 to begin with. If Disney had said, we want to create a new Star Wars saga, they could have set this film a couple hundred years in the future with all brand new characters. They could have made many of the same mistakes that they made in this, but fans would have been a lot less sensitive to them. The problem here is that unlike Star Trek, which feels really detached, it feels like a reboot. You walk in going, okay, I know this isn't going to be the same Star Trek. Disney said this is a continuation of the Star Wars Skywalker saga. This is the sequel to Return of the Jedi. Star Wars fans know one of the things they love, and I love it, is the continuity. How you look at that original trilogy and you can watch all three of those as one gigantic film. They mesh perfectly. You can scrutinize it, and believe me, I've watched those films at least 50 times a piece over the years, and it is something that I've been aware of, and I can't really find flaws. Like it's super tight. Now, the ultimate nitpickers I've seen will find mumbo jumbo garbage, whatever. But realistically, as far as the narrative go, it's probably the tightest, most consistent to itself trilogy in history than film that I've seen. I'd challenge someone else to point a trilogy out that did it better. But the problem with Rise of Skywalker isn't just that it panders to the fans. It doesn't have any vision. It really feels like we didn't really have an idea. We know this is the last film, so let's try to just figure out something that fits the last film. Like, let's just make up a story. It's like the old school way of filmmaking where you're just like, oh, Die Hard was successful. Let's come up with a Die Hard 2. Hey, that was pretty successful. Let's come up with a Die Hard 3. There wasn't any vision of how this character would go. They just made it up as they went. And they did that with Star Wars, and it really, really shows. Now, I think, to Rian Johnson's credit, that man really does understand Star Wars. He was given a groundwork with Force Awakens that didn't really give him much to work with. Most of the flaws of his film are really just carried over stuff from The Force Awakens. Again, I'm not here to argue that. I keep going back to that, but it's one of those things that's been in my mind for so long, and it's one of the things that's argued so much. This video is going to contain spoilers, if you haven't already kind of guessed. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, I don't think, but the film starts off with a really cool scene with Kylo Ren. And he's going to the secret Sith planet of Exegol, which for some reason I'm still unaware of. Maybe someone out there can explain it to me. Is not Korriban, because why? And he goes up, and we're quickly introduced to Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine is back, and he explains in a really quick exposition that Snoke was just his puppet, and he's been pulling the strings for the Sith the entire time, for thousands of years apparently, and all the Sith reside in him. He's this giant Sith monster. Now, credit where credit's due. In the shape of this trilogy and where it was at, and without planning, It wasn't a terrible idea of how it was executed. I think it was stupid to bring Palpatine back. I really still stand by the idea that Snoke should have been revealed as Plagueis, and Plagueis should have been on this planet instead. When Ben goes and he shows up and there's Snoke still there, like, holy shit, what the hell? There's no reason whatsoever that Palpatine needed to be in this story. Absolutely none. And some might argue, well, Ash, you know, Rey, she's a Palpatine. That was unnecessary as well. That was complete fan service. Palpatine, the character as portrayed in this film, could have actually been replaced with Snoke, therefore giving more legitimacy to the trilogy that you've already been telling us. Snoke let Ben believe he was dead. Ben shows up on this planet. Instead of finding Palpatine, he finds Snoke. Snoke says, I've been pulling the strings. Says the same thing that basically Palpatine does in this movie, and I've been behind it. Why? Because Snoke is actually Darth Plagueis. He was Palpatine's master. And if you're going to make Rey not a Skywalker, which is something I've been pulling for all the time, and if you're not going to make her this random, just nothing identity person that just appeared out of the Force, which was my second choice that I was kind of sold on, and I feel like the lore that The Last Jedi gave us with the light side being empty since Luke sealed himself off, that light had to find a way, so it found a vessel, and Rey was that vessel. That would have been an interesting story. Instead, it's just, oh, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. First of all, I don't understand why Palpatine would have a granddaughter. Why would he even have kids? Like, that part is never explained. But since we don't know about Plagueis, we can't question why would Plagueis have kids. Like, we don't know what... So Plagueis could be scheming for thousands of years, and Palpatine, instead of going, I'm going to capture my granddaughter, blah, 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 I'm going to pass my stuff all over to her, turn her to the dark side and pass all my evil things to her. No. It makes sense that he's going to capture the granddaughter of his former master. And, sorry. Yeah, Snoke would capture... Anyways, getting in the weeds. You may not have seen the film so far, so it's pointless to argue that much. I might talk about it in future stream discussions. So then we go back to the planet, some weird planet that the the Resistance is on, and Rey's training to be a Jedi, and we get some really weird scenes with Princess Leia that definitely feel like, oh, this was stuff that was pulled from the cutting room floor, and yeah. So that's kind of a problem. And then they have this MacGuffin. There's this whole thing that to find the planet Exegol it's a secret planet off in the far edge of the galaxy that no one's ever heard of, and there's only 2 things out there in the world that can find the planet, of which Kylo Ren has already found the first one, and now Rey is looking for the second one. So they go to this other planet, which looks like Tatooine. It's like the 3rd time we've taken to a desert planet, completely, again, uncreative. And they go to a Burning Man concert, or a Burning Man event, and for no reason. And then they track down this ship, and they go through a bunch of just random little adventures things. They finally kind of like find the thing, and Kylo Ren catches up with them, and yada, 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 and he ends up destroying it. So it's just like, oh, pointless. And then Rey, meanwhile, is taken to a point where she's got to escape because she's running from Kylo, who wants to capture her at the orders of Palpatine so she can be turned. He wants, of course, to do the Vader thing, like, no, Luke, join me. Together we can defeat the Emperor. And it's all rehash. This film, if you thought Force Awakens was a beat-for-beat rehash of New Hope, you were mostly right. This film may not be beat-for-beat Return of the Jedi, but man, it sure evokes some of the key elements there. We get a return of Luke Skywalker, as you can see here, who comes back as a Force ghost, and he's got a couple cool moments. It really feels like Disney trying to clean up perceived mess of The Last Jedi, but the problem is I don't think that The Last Jedi was a mess. there was things there to work with. And your job as a writer, a professional writer that gets paid millions of dollars to write film, to be creative and write around what's going on. Not to just be like, oops, I got to make up some weird excuse to explain things. So I didn't hate the scenes with Luke. They did feel a little awkward. It did keep true to what I liked, how Last Jedi handled Luke. You see in the scenes that just passed, one of the other big problems of this film is that the two sub-characters, Poe and Finn, they're really just kind of put on the back burner. This is the third and final film, not just of this trilogy, but of the whole entire saga. And they're just sort of given like a back seat, like, oh, and this character here, who looks really cool and could have had a really cool Boba Fett moment, is introduced as a new love interest for Poe. All of a sudden, at the 11th hour, we get this new love interest. She would have served much better as a Boba Fett type character, where you see her, she's got some cool lines, you know she's had some past with Poe, and then you move on. This character is shoehorned in even worse as the new potential possibly love interest for Finn. Why? Because you gotta pull Rose Tico out. Why? Because fans were outraged. But here's the thing. Fans didn't like Rose Tico, not because they don't like Kelly Marie Tran. The character wasn't interesting. Now, I found her interesting. I think her character is actually very important for Finn, but by abandoning the arc that they were establishing, because look, Finn and Rey, spoiler alert, they don't hook up. They don't get together. There's no love interest. Rose's purpose was to steer Finn away so that Finn had an exit, a narrative of why he's not with Rey. Because the very first film seems to put Finn and Rey on a trajectory together. Just like the original Star Wars, where Luke and Leia are on a trajectory together, Lucas introduces, your brother and sister. That immediately puts the kibosh. And as a narrative, you understand it. It's a little awkward. But if Finn finds an actual love interest that identifies with him, and I liked the idea of Finn and Rose. I really do. I know a lot of people are going to like roll their eyes at hearing that, but she served a strong purpose, and you could develop her into a cool character. There were scenes in this movie where she's replaced by the new girl, Kana, I think's her name, and it's so forced. It's so like, oh look, I was a stormtrooper too, just like you. Here's my stormtrooper number, and just immediately they both like each other. She becomes like this hero character. Like, it just for no reason. I hated her. I hated her character completely. All in all, I got to keep this video short, as I promised. Star Wars Rise of Skywalker was a mess of writing. Carrie Fisher was handled with absolute tact and taste. I think it would have been better to have her sort of the moment she dies in this film, the character, and it's done really well. I really liked how she passed. It served a heroic purpose. But that could have really been done at the beginning of this film. That would have been the best thing. And here's the thing. I didn't ever like Kylo Ren until this film. And because he was set up that he killed his father, like just brutally, heartlessly, he's a despicable character. He should never be redeemed. And I've been standing by that. But the way this film redeems him, and Leia is integral to this. It's kind of circular to Luke redeeming his father, Leia redeems her son, type thing. I'm gonna be on board. I'm like, okay, I don't like this idea. I think it's a bad idea to do it, but you did it in the best way that you possibly could. And Adam Driver sells the shit out of it. Adam Driver is absolutely by far the best thing in this film. This is the character that I wanted to see all along. We don't get it until the last 30 minutes of this film. You're like, oh, finally we get this awesome character, and he's gone. This should have been at the beginning of this film. We could have sold the idea of Ben being a hero throughout this film, because the beginning, Leia passes, he comes to terms. really could have done some cool thing. But instead, they're shoehorning all these new characters in that I don't care about, and the characters I do care about, and you're actually doing a good job with, are kind of on the wayside. Daisy Ridley does a solid job, honestly, for what she has. This is the best version of Rey of all three films. She's the most likable. She's also the most believable as a hero. You actually sort of care for her. She doesn't run around as Super Mary Sue, although she does have the god powers. J.J. Abrams, of course, can't get over having ships rise out of the water. I don't know why he loves to do this. If you thought Starkiller Base was ridiculous, the threat in this one, it just tops that. It's like that picture there of the Star Destroyers doesn't even do it justice. There are thousands of Star Destroyers. The threat is so ridiculous that even the film just doesn't even address it. It's just like, whatever. And of course, the way to stop it is there's a tower, a signal tower. And if we destroy the signal towers, then they can't coordinate movements. It's so dumb. It's dumber than the oscillator of Starkiller Base. And that's the thing I would go back to J.J. Abrams. His stories may be more palatable. Force Awakens may be more palatable to a lot of people, but it's dumbed down, simpleton Star Wars. Rian Johnson's may be really tough to swallow, but there's a lot of depth in there. There's a lot of stuff to digest and dig into about a guy who really understands Star Wars. Now, we all have a different emotional attachment to Star Wars, so we're going to come away differently. And you're obviously going to have your own opinions. But JJ is like, it's just fan service. This whole film was fan service. There were some cool moments, and there's a ton more that I could talk about. But I wanted to get my reaction out there while people are still looking at reactions to hear it. Because I don't like to waste my time. I'm not monetized, but I do like people to at least, get some hits on my video just to make it worth my while. I am interested in the conversation, what you thought. If you're just a Star Wars hater and you're just like, screw this, hate all the films, there's nothing good, okay, I don't necessarily need to hear that. But if you are an open-minded person, if you're like, look, I don't think the film was good, but I can find some good things out about it, or if you're like some of the people I saw the film with and I walked away, they really liked it, that's fine too. Like, I enjoyed this film because as a fan, I'm predisposed to like Star Wars, right? So I admit that. This is sort of a guilty pleasure film. There were things about this film where I was able to go, you know what? I've already tuned out. I've already resigned myself to be like, Disney Star Wars is nonsense. Like, it's just, this is Elseworlds stuff. This is fan fiction. So then I approach it on that level and say, well, as fan fiction, does it have any value? And it has some. My expectations were low. They weren't really, super surprised, but be that as it may. Thanks so much for listening. I got to cut this video off short now. Leave your comments below. I would like to do a live stream and talk about Star Wars, but I don't know if I have anyone that I can talk Star Wars with, so that kind of sucks. But we'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.